studio. Thanks for tuning in this morning to Ride the Wave with us. Each week our goal is to give you at least one suggestion that will make your life a little better. My name is Phil George. I'm a clinical biochemist, certified personal trainer, and health coach. Please remember, everything we discuss on the show is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. Always seek the guidance of your medical professional. Today's show is going to be on healthy aging. In fact, we're going to be doing a big seminar on this in April at the Greendale Y. We're going to go into a lot more detail. And for the viewers that don't know, the seminars we run are a lot different. We run them like a game show. We give out prizes, we ask questions. You know, the whole point is to have some fun with this, but also to educate you. So if you want, shoot me over an email, philgeorge@charter.net. Am I at the bottom of the screen? I'm at the bottom of the screen. Just with that email right there, and I'll send you over the information. And again, it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of laughs, but you also get an awful lot of really good information. So this is going to be kind of like an abbreviated version of the whole thing with healthy aging. Now, a lot of people may not know, but you really have two ages, not just one. You have your chronological age, or how old you are in years, but then you also have something called your biological age. Actually, this guy's going to win the Nobel Prize for this. His name is Steve Horvath, and he developed something called the Horvath clock. Now, the Horvath clock can actually give you your actual biological age. So some people could be 10 years older than the chronological age, and some people could be 10 years younger than the chronological age. In fact, again, you can email me, philgeorge@charter.net. We now can figure out by some very simple lab test that you probably have already done in terms of what your biological age is. I am a good friend of mine, Coach Kane, Jim Kane, past Leicester resident. He's one of the top tennis coaches in New England. And I ran his biological age, and he's actually 5 years younger than his chronological age. And it's interesting because they've done a study, and for some reason, Jim's obviously a big tennis player, but they found out people that play racket sports on average are 5 years younger than their chronological age. And they think that has something to do with the hand-eye, connection, because they're looking at tennis balls and they're hitting it. But the other thing is, and again, to a little bit later on, is I have something I like to call the 4 pillars of health. Now, this isn't just me. A lot of people feel this way. One of the key pillars is sleep. In other words, it's really important the quality of sleep you get. They also find if you don't sleep well, you can have an increased risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. So that's one thing. The second thing that's really important is nutrition. Obviously, nutrition is really important for healthy aging. Exercise is really important for healthy aging. In fact, there's a condition as you age. It's called sarcopenia. Now, all sarcopenia means is your muscles are getting weaker and weaker. They also did an interesting study, and they found out when people fall. When I do these seminars, I ask people, why do you think that people fall as they get older? And most people say it's because they lose their balance. So it's something called proprioception, which means where you are in space. Like, in other words, if you close your eyes and lifted one leg, you're still going to know where you are in space. That's called proprioception, where your body knows where it is in space, even if you can't see things. And that's part of it. But they did a test, and what they did is if you guys know marionettes, where they put the strings on people and on puppets and they hold them up. So they did this with older people, and they had them walk across a tile floor, and unbeknownst to them, they would lift up the tile and cause them to trip. And then they could see what was causing the problem. They found the problem wasn't so much the loss of balance. It was that their muscles were too weak to hold them up. I don't know if you've had a case where you're walking along and maybe the rug's up a little bit and you kind of catch it, but you're strong enough, to hold up. The muscles are strong enough to hold you up. But if your muscles aren't strong enough to hold you up, that's a problem, and that's called sarcopenia. That's a big problem. One of the big signs of healthy aging is being able your muscles are strong enough to hold you up. The other big one is your leg strength. They say your leg strength is really a good indicator of how well you're aging. That's why walking's so valuable and things like that, because, we're bipeds. We're bipeds. We're not like a dog on all fours. We're on two legs. Even chimpanzees, they're not on biped all the time. Times they're going on four legs, running along. So we're one of the few animals that are actually bipeds. We're basically based on just two feet. That's why your legs are really important. Actually, this is, I think, a good illustration. I've got a friend at the gym, Marty, and he's well into his 80s. Now, this guy, like my friend Jim, in fact, they know each other. He plays a lot of tennis, so he's a very active guy. I usually go to Planet Fitness every morning, the one at Webster Square, and I get there, early, between 4 and 5 in the morning. So we get the usual gym rats in there, the usual cast of characters. In fact, a couple episodes ago, I had Kate on, and she talked about vitamin B. And I've known Kate for 10 years and knew her. She's in her 30s now, and she was in her 20s back then. So Kate and I go back a long way. So you see the same cast of characters, the same gym rats, same time of day. And so, and I see Marty on a pretty regular basis. And, he's asked me, I'm a biochemist, asked me for, medical advice, and I give him medical advice. And again, he's on the treadmill. He's doing all the stuff that I showed him to do, because I'm also a personal trainer. And he was complaining to me about back problems. Now, back problems are probably the number one complaint people have. My back hurts. And so I mentioned to Marty, and he's had this for a while. There's a doctor, his name is Stu McGill, and he has something called the McGill Big 3, and he's the number one back doctor in the world. And you can feel free to email me, philgeorge@charter.net. I can send you over these particular exercises. Or if you want to hire me, I'm a trainer, I could work with you. That's what I did with Marty. I worked with Marty to get his back problems under control. So one of the key exercises, let me just back up. People think, if you ever seen the old skeletons, all it is a bunch of bones put together, right? It's hanging from a string, right? Because there's nothing to hold it up. It's just a skeleton. The only thing that's holding your skeleton up is your muscles. So if your muscles get weak, then what happens is the skeleton has to hold it up. In your case, it's going to be the different discs in your back. They're like this, little discs. And if you don't have muscles to hold them up, all the pressure goes on there, and that causes the back problem. So the problem is not so much with your discs. The problem is that your muscles holding up the disc are too weak. So what you've got to develop what's called your core muscles, all the muscles around your spine, to make it stronger. So one of the best exercises to do that is something called the plank. Plank is kind of does what it kind of sounds like. You're holding yourself straight up. And again, you can email me and I can send you videos on this. So I brought Marty, again, 80 plus years old, is having back problems. And I said, this is how you do the plank. But you have to have somebody watch you, because you've got to make sure your back is straight, you're doing it correctly and things like that. So I said, Marty, let's do this. So I showed him how to do the plank. And I said, what I want you to do it several times throughout the day. The other big problem as people get older, there's something called, your body can be in one or two states. One of them is called, anabolism, like anabolic steroids, what the bodybuilders use, build up the muscles. It's called anabolism. The other one is catabolism. So your body's breaking down, called rest and digest. So if you're eating, you're in a catabolism, you're breaking things down. Or, God forbid, you're in a bad accident, you're laying on the bed doing nothing, you're catabolizing your own muscles. So you want to be in a state of anabolism. So I mentioned to Marty, it's great to go to the gym for an hour and work out, but it's even better throughout the day to do these particular exercises. In fact, I'll show you. I like to call these exercise snacks. Let me see if I can stay in the camera. So one of them, and everybody has like a counter over here that you have most of the time. So throughout the day, you can basically, what you can do is you can just do push-ups like this. Anybody can do these, okay? The further you go back, the harder it is. So if you want to get close in the beginning, maybe do 20 of these. The other thing you can do is something called air squats. You just come down like this. Do 20 of those. You can do that. You can do that throughout the day. Maybe set your watch to go off every hour or every 2 hours, whatever you want. I worked with Fallon Rehab right here in Worcester for a while, and I had one of the gentlemen there, and he was in finance, doing the finance stuff, and he was, he was clearly obese. And we talked a little bit about diet, and we also talked about exercise. He says, well, I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. I showed him those 2 exercises. I says, can you just take an hour away from your day? And yeah, I can do that. Anybody can do that, right? Just the desk push-ups and the air squats. And again, you can email me. I can send you over these. And these are called exercise snacks. Again, you want to keep your muscles kind of always in that anabolic state where they're always kind of under stress a little bit. And then you have a good night's sleep, and you take care of it from there. So I saw Marty at the gym this morning, and again, I watched him do the plank, and I asked him, Marty, how's your back? He says, it's incredible. I mean, I got no more pain in my back. So it actually worked. Actually, it was funny because what I did is I was at the gym this morning, and I left, and I said, geez, I'd love to have him on the show. And he would basically say what I just told you, that I did these planks, and I did these air squats, and he did this throughout the day, and my back is, and he's 80 plus years old. But he said he had to take his wife to a doctor's appointment, so he wasn't able to make it. But I'd like to have maybe people on the show that I've actually worked with, and I've tried stuff too, because one of the greatest joys I have in life is when I work with a client and they get better. I mean, that's the whole point. In fact, what I do is when I work with a client, I say to them in the very beginning, my goal is to have you fire me as quickly as you possibly can. Because again, if I'm doing my job, what I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to make you self-sufficient, and hopefully not only make you self-sufficient, but you could pass this along to your kids, to your wife, to your relatives, these exercise snacks. So again, it's kind of like you throw a pebble in a lake and you get ripples. So kind of playing it forward to where you can also help other people. So what I do is, just to let you know, I do health coaching. I also do personal training. I'm a biochemist, mainly to do with nutrition. I do the first seminar for free, and not seminar, the first health coaching for free. And we can do that. This show is going to go on YouTube. It's going to go all over the world. So you may not be able to meet me in person if you're in England or someplace, but I can work with you virtually, through Zoom and things like that, and show you different things, look at your diet, look at your lab work. And the other thing, what differentiates me from other health coaches is, again, I'm a biochemist. I know the mechanism of action. I know how things work. Unfortunately, you can become a health coach in 30 days. You want to go online, pay them the fee, and you'll learn certain things. But again, you have to understand how the body works from the inside out, and that's what a biochemist does. I'm actually, I get my undergrad's in biochemistry. I also have a degree in clinical biochemistry. Now, what that means is I actually trained medical students on clinical procedures, how lab tests, what they mean, new lab tests to order. So I'm basically a clinician, clinical biochemistry, but I also understand biochemistry. The other thing you get if you decide to work with me is you're going to get a mini course in biochemistry. So again, I make it understandable for a lay person, but you're going to understand how the body works and why you want to do certain things. So I'm not one of these people just say, do this, do that. I'm going to explain why you want to do it, how your body works. The other thing, there's not one size fits all. In other words, you could have, what I say to clients is, if I were you, this is what I would do. But I'm not you. You have different genes than I do. You have a different biochemistry than I have. So we have to look at the big picture of what works. And again, the whole point is, if you think about it, your health is the most important thing. When I do seminars sometimes, I joke with people and I say, if I could wave a magic wand over you and make all your illnesses go away, how much would you pay me? I mean, their eyes like, ugh, Again, your health is the most important thing. So I think it's, again, I used to teach, I coached the Becker College men's tennis team. I coached the women's tennis team over at Worcester University. And you're not going to learn how to play tennis on your own. You need somebody that can be able to teach you how to play tennis. You can't play golf on your own. You've got to watch you. Same with exercise. If you're going to exercise, you need a trainer to watch you to make sure you're doing things correctly. So that's one of the things. It's a good idea to have a health coach to basically help you with this stuff. So again, exercise is important. Nutrition is really, really important. Make sure I cover everything here. Okay, I cut horrible clot, back problems, sarcopenia. Oh, okay. The whole point of the show is to give you some advice that'll make your life a little better. So I'm going to cover basically hernias. I've had 2 hernia surgeries. So to let you know, so there's let me explain what a hernia is. If you guys are familiar with like a regular tire on a bicycle or on a car, if you've ever seen it, you have something called an inner tube, and that's a real soft tube. In the old days, remember, you have the inner tubes. You go on the lake and you get in the inner tube. It's this big round thing, or they have these kids floating them, with the seal and stuff like that. So it's an inner tube that goes inside of a tire, which is the outer wall. Now, sometimes what you'll see is if you have a problem with your tire, you'll bring it into a tire shop. And what they'll say is the inner tube is coming through the out of the tire. You can see it. It's coming right through it. That's what happens with the hernia. You can have a hernia in a lot of different places, but most of them are called inguinal hernias, which is in your groin, and the other one is umbilical hernias, which is where your belly button is. Those are the 2 most common. Now, what happens, just like with the inner tube, if you can imagine the wall over here, the inner tube, and it passes through there, and it comes out, and you can see the little bubble come out. That's basically what happens. You have inside of your gut, you have a wall. The wall gets penetrated by this hernia, goes through. That on its own is not a good thing, but the real trouble with hernia, the real danger, is something called a strangulated hernia, where it goes through the wall of your intestine and it gets caught and it can't get loose and it blows up. That can be really, really dangerous. You could technically, die from that. So that's really serious. So, if you got a hernia, I'm not saying you should always get it repaired. So this is my own personal story. So what happened, again, I go to the gym, I lift a lot of weights. I probably try to lift too much. Some people wear this hernia belt so it doesn't pass through to support it. So I wound up having a right inguinal hernia repaired. And the way 99-point-something% of all hernias, they do what they call a mesh. So remember, the hernia is coming through. So what they do is they push the hernia back in and they put a mesh over it, so that weakened part of your wall is not going to come through. I had a right inguinal done, and I had an umbilical. Again, they put a mesh there. This is unbeknownst to me. So there's 2 types of hernia surgeries you can have. One of them is the most common, is a mesh. And I had both of these done. I've had no problems. That was 30 years ago. So I've had no problems with this. Everything's held up. And I'm sure like 90+% of them hold up. There's the other type of surgery for hernias. It's called a Canadian method. And I heard about this, actually. I do still listen to Dr. Radio and sports. They had sports, and these 2 sports doctors came on. And they were talking about hernias, and what they talking about, they said they would not have the mesh done. The mesh, because what happens is, if the mesh goes in there, and if the mesh comes apart, it breaks apart, it goes all over the place, and it can cause a lot of problems in your body. You get this mesh going all over your body. They want to do what's called a Canadian method. And I think you can find a place that does it. If I would have had, I also have a slight hernia on my left inguinal, but it's not that bad. If I had it done, I was considering actually going to Canada and having it sewn up, because I don't want to take a chance. I'm lucky on these, no problem, but I don't want to have a chance that this thing was going to fall apart. I'm pretty sure, again, you can email me, they'll do this around here. You can find somebody that will do the Canadian method. And remember the little hole you got with the coming through, they push it back in, they sew it up. And the sewing, apparently, there's not going to be any problems with it. But they don't like doing it because it's a lot easier to do the mesh. Again, I've had no problems with it, and probably 90+% it's no problem, but I don't like to take any chances. So if I would have had to have it done again, I would have probably have done the Canadian method and had it sewn up. I did see I was pretty sure I was having a slight hernia on my left side. So I went to see my primary care. He checked, yeah, you definitely got a hernia there. But it's not that bad. It's not popping out. So what I do, and again, you can email me, there's something called a truss. Now what a truss is, and when I go to the gym and I lift weights, I wear this truss. The truss, what it does is you put like a little belt on, and it hits a pad right over where the left inguinal hernia is on the groin, and it pushes down on it, so it kind of keeps it in place. So that's what I've done. And I've done this for years, and I was following this one guy on YouTube, and he said he's got a hernia, and he does the same thing. Again, any kind of surgery you have done, there's always risks in every surgery. So in my opinion, if you can avoid a surgery, avoid it. But again, there are risks, and again, not medical advice, there are risks for the strangulation and the hernia. So, I mean, if you got a really bad hernia, some people just push it back in. Mine's not that bad, and I wear this truss. Again, it keeps it in. Have you ever seen these weightlifters? They had these big belts around over there to support them when they're lifting heavy things, because they don't want to have a hernia. The other thing, if you're going to wind up doing any kind of lifting heavy things, don't hold your breath, because if you hold your breath, you're putting more pressure on the hernia. So breathe when you're lifting things. So be careful with that. So again, if you lift things that are too heavy, even if you're not a weightlifter, you're lifting furniture and stuff like that, you've got to be a little bit careful. So hopefully that's, again, a suggestion, and I can send you information on these the mesh. And again, that's 90+% of all hernia surgeries are done with the mesh and not with the Canadian. Again, if I were to do it, I'd go with the sewing method, because there's like as close to zero chance of messing up as you can get. The mesh can come apart, can go all over your body. So that's an issue. So we covered the mesh. We covered the umbilical. The other thing I want to talk about is something called omega-3s. So I did a big seminar. We had over 150 people over at the senior center, and that was to do with heart health. We also just did one for brain health over at the Greendale Y, and the same thing came up on both of these seminars. And one of them is something called omega-3s. Omega-3 is basically fish oil. So what I do is usually the best way to get your omega-3s is with fish, specifically salmon. You've got to be very, very careful with tuna. Okay, tuna contains a lot of mercury. Dr. Oz had mercury poisoning. There's a bunch of people that wound up with mercury poisoning because tuna can contain a lot of mercury. The problem with mercury is this: mercury is a heavy metal, and your body's really, really smart. So you can have, the other problem is this: if you get a can of tuna, you don't know if there's a gram of mercury in there or 10 grams. There's no way to know. Depending on that fish, how much mercury that fish ate, you have no idea. So I don't recommend tuna. What you want is salmon. Salmon, minimal amount of mercury, if any. But the key thing is you want wild salmon, because they have something called farm salmon. There's a molecule called astaxanthin. Astaxanthin is what makes flamingos pink and what also makes salmon pink. So what happens with these farm salmons, if you look at salmon's pink. A lot of times what they'll do with the farm salmon, they'll put dye on it to make it look pink, okay? But you want the astaxanthin. Astaxanthin is very, very powerful. It's a very powerful antioxidant. So astaxanthin is really good. But you want the wild salmon. And farm salmon, what they do is they feed them like grain and stuff like that. The grain sprayed with glyphosate, which is Roundup, which is a poison. And they're not eating what they're supposed to eat. And they're in these little pens and they're swimming. They're not happy. They're not happy salmons. So I get my salmon from a company in Alaska. It's a husband and wife, and I've gotten it for years. They ship it to you. And in a way, it's going to be cheaper than getting it from the supermarket, because you're cutting out the middleman. Okay, so if you're a supermarket, you're going to buy it from somebody, you're going to pay them, but then you're going to turn around, you're going to store it, you're going to pay your employees and everything else. So there's the middleman. So I get it directly from this salmon company in Alaska. So it's wild salmon. It's the best salmon. If you want, I have a relationship with them. If you email me, philgeorge@charter.net, I can get you $50 off your first order. And they have all kinds of salmon. They have all kinds of stuff over there, but it's all wild Alaskan salmon. So that's what you want. The other thing you can get is also fish oil pills. But you've got to be careful with this. Again, because if they're getting the fish oil and they're getting it from fish that are contaminated, or you don't know what's going on with it. So I have a trusted company that I get. I also take supplements of fish oil, with that, because I want my omega-3s to be elevated. The average American, their omega-3 index in their body is like 2%, whereas in Japan it's 7 or 8%. So we need omega-3s for a bunch of reasons. One of them is it's heart healthy. What it does is it helps coat your heart. It also goes into your brain, so it helps with brain health. So you get two benefits from this. One of them, it's heart healthy. The other one is that it's also a brain healthy, because again, it's omega-3s, the EPA and the DHA. And if you're a pregnant woman, you definitely want this, because what happens, the baby, to build the brain up correctly, you need to get enough omega-3s to get in there. But you don't want to contaminate your body or contaminate the baby's body either. So I have a trusted source. There's a company, an international company. What they do is they rate all these companies. They do just spot testing on all of their different fish supplements to see if they're clean. Do they got mercury in them? Do they have heavy metals in them? Do they have plastic in them? That stuff. So I have a trusted company, and it's third-party, independently tested for the omegas. The other problem is some omegas can be rancid. They smell lousy and things like that. So that's another thing to be careful of. So again, I highly recommend getting the wild Alaskan salmon, and also the fish oil. If you're meat is really good for you, but you want meat from grass-fed, grass-finished cows, happy cows. I also have a relationship with another company that, again, this is in Georgia. They've been around for over 100 years. They get cows, they're grass-fed cows. They walk around, they're not in little pens and things like that. So, and they have really good meat. You want grass-fed, grass-fed, grass-finished meat from healthy cows. So that's the other thing. So covered. So the omega-3, I measure that. You want to be careful of what they call seed oils. They contain something called linoleic acid. That's like canola oil. The stuff that they cook chicken in, it's basically it's canola oil. It's very oxidative. In fact, if you're looking for a good chicken place, one of the sponsors on my show is New Kitchen, New Chicken. They cook their they don't cook it in canola oil. They cook it in healthy oil, in avocado oil, and they also cook their French fries in a healthy oil with that too. So you want to be careful where you're eating. Again, I notice a lot of chicken places opening up. But again, they're cooking that stuff in seed oils, which are very oxidative. It causes a lot of inflammation. The other really good thing on the omegas is it's very anti-inflammatory. So if you get a lot of aches and pains in your fingers and stuff like that, it's very anti-inflammatory. So it helps your brain, helps your heart, anti-inflammatory. So it does a bunch of really positive things. So again, email me. I can get you $50 off your first order. They ship it right to you. You can, put it in your freezer, do whatever with it. But I think it's going to be less expensive. It's going to be much healthier for you. And again, I eat fish at least twice a week, and I eat meat the other times. And I eat healthy meat, healthy fish, and the rest of that. So we're coming up towards the end of the show. If you have any questions, email me, philgeorge@charter.net. If you want to, we have seminars coming up, a bunch of different places for seminars. If you have a business, you want us to come out and make your business, we can do seminars for businesses also. And okay, so guys, so thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Email me, philgeorge@charter.net, if you have any questions. Or again, we can meet with you virtually through Zoom, or I can meet with you in person. Remember, the first meeting is free. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next week. One of the most common questions I'm asked as a biochemist and health coach is, what are the best supplements to take? Choosing supplements is a tricky business. Many companies have poor quality control and questionable ingredients. In the past, I had to send clients to several different websites. I am now able to offer one-stop shopping for all the quality brands I recommend with no shipping cost and a lower price in most cases. Just email me, philgeorge@charter.net, for a free consult.